This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. This summer already feels different now that most of Connecticut's pandemic restrictions have been lifted. Nearly 6 out of 10 residents have been fully vaccinated against COVID. This moment means many venues are ready to open their doors, to welcome back an audience, to enjoy a concert or theater performance in person. Today, Where We Live, we focus on theater and find out how local companies have decided to reopen. We also learn how the last year and a half led them to change the way they've operated and engaged with their communities. And we want to hear from you. What did you miss about seeing a theater show? How have you continued to support local theater where you live? Here's the number, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can share a comment on our Facebook page or find us on Twitter at Where We Live. On Zoom with me now is Tanisha Dugan, artistic producer at TheaterWorks Hartford. Tanisha, welcome back to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to hear from you again. Also with us is Jackie Hubbard, Executive Artistic Director at Ivoryton Playhouse. Jackie, welcome back as well.
Thank you, Lucy. It's great to be back.
Now, I spoke to both you and Tanisha last October when theater was paused, and there were different ways that theaters were connecting with audiences. But one thing that was similar was that your building was closed and a lot of uncertainty about the virus last October and the continuing impact on the arts. So can you talk a little bit about these last few months as you gear up for this summer, Jackie, and what you've been hearing from your community?
Well, we have a great community, a lot of support. And in fact, when we did get the go-ahead from Equity that we could open, our building was looking very sad. She's an old lady. She's, 110 years old, and she was showing every wrinkle. So I have to do a big shout out right here to the Essex Lions Club, who came out and helped us weed and paint and polish and just try and get her looking not so neglected. So we are feeling a lot better. It's like we've had a bit of a facelift, and we're feeling like the building is ready now to open the doors again. It was a long time. I think it was the longest period that we had been dark since World War II. So, we're ready, and we're opening up next Thursday. So it's going to be, we're all a little anxious. We're all a little nervous about it. And, I was saying it's sort of like falling off a bicycle, or at least not riding a bike for a long time and then having to get back on and remember how to pedal without falling off. And I'm sure that we'll all remember once we get back on. It's just that nervousness, about starting up again. But yeah, we're ready to go. And our community is ready for us to be back. Because we have sold out the first week. We're socially distant seating because we had to start selling tickets a couple of months ago when that was still what was required. Things change constantly, and we have to, be true to what we told our ticket buyers when they originally bought tickets. So this first show is socially distanced, and because it's union actors, their requirements right now are that all audience members wear a mask. And I know that's going to be hard because the state has very different requirements, but we have to do that for this first show. And we have had some, a lot of people who were very upset about this. In fact, just this week I was called a fascist dictator, which was quite interesting. But
wait, because you have to have masks in the audience, really?
Yes.
I thought we were over this. Tanisha, let me go to you. What are you hearing from your community? I know Walden will be opening, and this is a different experience.
It is a very different experience. For us, being back was really about coming back to live performance with an in-person audience. So we've sort of pulled that apart from our actual space, which I think, feels different to different folks. I get the questions all the time of like, well, when are you back? And it's like, well, technically we've never been gone. This, Walden as an in-person project will mean for us that we have never been dark in our 30 years, because every season we produced a live in-person project. And when we selected Walden, it was back when everything that we were going to share this year was going to be digital. But when we started to sort of see how things could be, and also sort of using our past experience of last summer while we were really still in the depths of COVID, and sort of recognizing that folks were coming outside more, that there was a movement to sort of get out of the house, we sort of knew we wanted to pivot Walden to a live performance. And so fortunately, Jackie, you haven't had to deal with the mask thing, because masks outdoors is definitely different.
Yes.
But you're right. There's a lot of sort of projection you have to do in this time. And I suspect that will continue for the next year to a certain degree as we sort of move out of full-on pandemic lockdown mode into whatever this new time will be.
Can you talk a little bit more about Walden and how it's going to be outdoors, it's more immersive, and a little bit about the characters in this performance?
Sure. So Walden is set in the not so distant future in a cabin in the woods. And so we decided, while we can't actually take us into the future, we can surely take ourselves out into the woods. And so we're collaborating with the Riverfront Recapture and producing this piece on a plot of land that they've recently acquired. And TheaterWorks, our aesthetic has always been about intimacy and about stories that typically are small casts. So it's a 3-person cast. It follows 2 NASA one of them is a NASA architect, one of them wanted to be, and some things came up, and an Earth advocate. The world has become inhospitable, and NASA is setting up to colonize Mars. But there's a cohort of humans who are desperately trying to revive and survive on planet Earth. And so that's where we meet our characters as they sort of decide where they want to be and how they want to live, both actually physically, is it going to be here on Earth or someplace else, but also the sort of really I don't want to say normal, although it is, but sort of typical for us family story, intimate story about relationship and the ways we take care of each other or not, in pursuit of our own dreams, and maybe in denial of others.
That sounds really interesting. And that's opening is it end of July?
It's opening at the end of July 28th. And I guess one more thing I should add, in addition to being on the site and really, our audience being in the world of this play without any barrier of a building, but actually being there on the homestead. We're building, there's going to be a chicken coop with chickens and garden beds and compost pile. The director, Mayan Tao, she really wanted to make sure that what she was leaving behind to our audiences as they watched this show was a map of how they could live in this way if they so chose. So, there's that piece to it, but it's also because we're outside, they've made the choice to put all of the audience in headsets and headphones. So this allows you to hear the actors very intimately, but also like a film, when, a fly comes in from the window, when you hear it coming into your right ear as it lands on the table. We can play with some of those things, the pouring of wine, the chopping of onions as they're making dinner. Again, some of this talks about Mars. So what does it mean to get a kind of otherworldly sound and feel? So it's a sound immersive project, which is a kind of innovation that we would never have stepped into if we were in our own space, that we're really excited. So it's a really, really exciting project. It's a really exciting team. And we're thrilled to sort of be back and to really embrace what it means to be back in a new way.
You're hearing Tanisha Dugan, again, artistic producer at TheaterWorks Hartford. With us also Jackie Hubbard, executive artistic director at Ivoryton Playhouse, as we talk about how local theater are beginning their summer season. Some are opening doors. Others, like Tanisha, talking about TheaterWorks and this immersive experience along the river with the performance Walden opening at the end of July. We want to hear from you. What have you missed about seeing theater with an audience in a building? You can join us, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So Tanisha, what conversations is TheaterWorks having about when it's time to have a show, a performance in your building in Hartford?
So, we anticipate being back in the fall, and semi-replicating our season of past. I think one of the things we've learned in this time is how do we take care of ourselves, as we were sort of working through our anti-racist practices and realizing, like, while it also very much has to do with centering Black and Brown perspectives as we understand how to, like, move forward. Part of doing that is going, wait a second, has the way we've been working been oppressive to us? And recognizing we have the power to shift that. So still, wanting to provide audiences and the Connecticut region with an abundance of offerings, but also being really honest with ourselves about where we are stretching our capacity too thin. So I think we found a really excellent balance in terms of the number of in-person shows in our theater. And we're going to continue doing our digital because we've learned that the access to new audience that find the building oppressive for whatever reason, audiences that are still navigating whether or not they're true, quote unquote, theater goers. We're going to continue with our digital programming. It also has been really fantastic for us as it relates to new work development. I mean, getting to have the best actors in the country or world come and support a playwright in a brand new work has really been transformative. And so we're going to continue developing new works in the digital space in addition to digital productions, much like what folks saw with Russian Troll Farm, but we're realizing that there are many ways to produce digitally. There are many artists who are really committed to this work. And so you may or may not have seen Russian Troll Farm, but I think what we're learning is that that's not the only way to make digital theater, and that there's a whole cohort of young, fresh, new artists who are excited by the medium and the way it can reach audiences far broader than we could ever get into our space. And so that's sort of where we're looking at both, coming back to our building, absolutely coming back in the fall, but maintaining some of the things we've learned in our time away.
Jackie, pick up on what Tanisha was saying about in this last year and a half, this desire to take better care of staff, the theater families that you've nurtured for so many years. That's important to you.
That is, honestly, Tanisha, that is exactly how we felt during this year, the roller coaster ride of the year. Though we weren't able to do digital content in the same way, we did do some stuff. But what we did find very much was how we had been overworking ourselves, stretching everybody to the limit, everybody wearing 4 or 5 hats. And I think that's a historical thing with theater. We just roll up our sleeves and do it. Oh, you need somebody, we need help building this. So I'll do it. I'll take that on. And the more you do that, you realize you probably have an organization that needs, 25 people, and there's 10 of you doing it. So this year definitely has done that with us. And, not for nothing, but we're not getting any younger at the Playhouse. And it's like, should I really be doing all of these things? Let's take the time to see what it really requires to run this place. And we were doing 8 productions a year, 7 professional and 1 big community piece. And one of the big decisions to come out of this year is going forward. So we've already started planning 2022. We will have six productions. 6 is probably manageable for us. we will do longer runs. That has always been a risk. And I think that risk comes from this crazy thing when I started running year round, which was, I think, 2006, around that time. The Abington Playhouse had been a summer theater since 1930. And everyone said there was no audience for the spring, the fall, the winter. Nobody will come. Well, they have been coming. And so why am I just dangling little 2 and 3 week runs? Let's do it. Let's try this. We've been doing it now for long enough that we know we have an audience out there. So longer runs, more thoughtful theater. Let's not think our audience can't take on the meat of a show that maybe I've been hesitant to do because I didn't want to scare them off. But I think we all in theater have thought about this a lot and thought about, why are we doing this? What stories do we want to share with our audience? Of course, we want to make people feel better. We want to enlighten them. We want to enrich their lives. But, people are ready to think about things. People are ready to take on some questions. But our first show, of course, I have gone with as light and funny and zany as possible, because I needed people to feel comfortable coming back into a building, because, we are asking them to come back into a theater. So we just have something fun, so that at the end of it, they can say, I shared a moment of laughter, of music, of silliness with a bunch of people, and it was safe, and I feel good, and I'll come back. And so that's what we're doing.
Your first show opening July 8th, Murder for Two. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's how to cram, 100 things into one show. It is a murder mystery musical comedy. And 2 very talented musician actors, Ian Lowe and Joe Kanosian, who also wrote the piece, actually. And it is, it's zany madcap farce, Agatha Christie style. And it's a lot of fun. They both are very talented musicians, so they both play the piano. Ian plays the detective. Joe plays 13 suspects, and he's a bit of a magician in his ability to do that with no costume changes or, simply physically with his body. And I think that anybody who's hesitant about coming into a theater, this is the kind of show that's just going to make them relax, have fun, enjoy themselves, and think, you know what, I can do this. I'm ready for live theater.
When you're thinking about a smaller show with a smaller cast, this also follows the guidance you've been getting from the Actors Equity Association Union, how to make it safe.
Yes, we do. I mean, that was a big decision making factor in the shows that we could choose this year, because I don't have a lot of housing, and we couldn't have actors sharing a space. So we kept this season, it's 2 and 3 characters. That was as much as we could do. And the guidelines when we set this out were so very stringent, it was impossible for us to plan for anything bigger than that. But I think it's okay. I think that actually in a way the audience will like that. It is an intimate show and an intimate experience. So that, for a little theater like the Playhouse, sometimes it's fun to do these great big musicals and reduce them down onto a small stage. But I think this year we're also tentative going back. I think these small shows are the way to go. And we've managed to, we're also doing the Delaney Sisters Having Our Say, which Hartford Stage did several years ago. And it's a wonderful piece. And we had talked about it for a while, and it just is it's a beautiful show for us at this time, and only 2 characters. And we're also going to do a new musical that features an Asian American fiddle player and her story in the world of bluegrass and country music, which is another, fascinating little gem of a piece. that I possibly wouldn't have thought about when we were producing a big season, because I'm always thinking about what will sell and how many tickets, how many people we can get in to see this, and does it have broad appeal. But because of this last year off, we've been able to be a little thoughtful maybe about, the stuff that's out there, and a little encouraging with new works, because we don't have the same demographics that TheatreWorks has. I'm so looking forward to your Walden. I have to say, that's just fascinating to me. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that. But we're restricted to the building. So
yeah. And you've got quite an extensive reopening plan on your website for patrons and members of the community who, if they have any anxiety about all the planning that's taking place to keep both your staff and your patrons safe. And I was really impressed when I read through that. But I wanted to ask you, you said something about, this year of having a little more time to think more thoughtfully about particular productions you might not have thought about in the past. Earlier, you shared the anecdote that a theater goer, didn't want to have to wear a mask when he or she is in your building, and being called names because of this.
Yes.
But how do you think your longtime patrons, your longtime supporters will feel about maybe some of these productions that you're thinking about putting on that maybe aren't considered traditional, or what they have come to expect from Ivoryton? How do you respond to those kinds of critiques?
So we have tried. Look, we're very small, so we tried to keep a lot of personal contact with our subscribers. We have about 1,000, so it's a lot of well, actually, I think we had 2,000 at the beginning of the pandemic, but it's a lot of people to talk to. But we try to talk to as many as possible. And you're always going to get people who don't like what you do. But on the whole, I'm sure Tanisha has found this too, when you support a theater for long enough, you support their mission. And if their mission includes trying new things or trying to engage new audiences, then they will support you as long as they feel listened to and cared for. Part of the COVID rules that we put on our website was to let people know that their safety is our primary concern. You have to feel safe coming into our building. We've had all the duct work. We've had so much work done on our ventilation system. We had to hire a COVID compliance officer who is going to be at every show to make sure that people are safe. These are all new things for a theater. These were never things we had to think about in the past, but being forced into thinking about it made us think about our audience safety and about their comfort level in coming in. Yes, of course, we know in the world at large, there's a huge divisive community on wearing masks and not wearing masks. And of course, it's going to happen in microcosm in our audience. But I can't help that. I can just tell people that we're doing what we can to make sure that people are safe. And when the union stops requiring it, I will still say, if you don't feel safe, wear a mask, because it's your safety that's paramount. So I know it's going to be interesting. And I know that opening up, we're going to have all kinds of people come, and some people won't come because of that. I've already heard from people who said, we will not be coming to your theater while you have a mask requirement. And, there is not much I can do about that except to say, well, I'm sorry, and we'll miss you.
This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. We're talking to theater makers in our state. You just heard Jackie Hubbard, Executive Artistic Director at Ivoryton Playhouse. Also with us on Zoom, Tanisha Dugan, Artistic Producer at TheatreWorks Hartford. We're going to continue talking after the break, and we want to hear from you. We just heard about some new productions that Tanisha and Jackie are thinking about in this year when social justice was so prominently highlighted. Theater is back, but back for whom? We'll talk more about these efforts to tell more diverse stories for more diverse audiences. And you can join us too, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. We're catching up with local theater makers today. It's an update from a show we did in October about making art during the pandemic. One of the things we talked about was what we lose when we can't experience theater together in person. Now, with most pandemic restrictions lifted in Connecticut and more than 2 million residents in our state fully vaccinated against COVID, some theaters are welcoming patrons back into their buildings for the summer season. Are you excited to see a theater performance in person? We want to hear from you. 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can share a comment on our Facebook page or find us on Twitter at Where We Live. With us on Zoom today is Tanisha Dugan, artistic producer at TheaterWorks in Hartford, and Jackie Hubbard, executive artistic director at Ivoryton Playhouse. Now, earlier we talked about ways communities have supported their local theaters through the pandemic. And joining us now on the phone is a longtime patron of Ivoryton Playhouse, Ann Bishop. Ann, are you there?
I am.
Thank you for joining us. So
can you hear
I know
me?
I can hear you. Now tell me how you've been able to continue supporting Ivoryton even when the theater was dark.
Well, the way we continue to do it is this time round we were able to give our tickets back, a small dabble, to help Jackie and her extraordinary crew keep going through what could be a very, very difficult and discouraging time, but they just mustered their strength and kept going, thank God. And we donate to the theater, and we try to spread the good word and encourage people to go. It's an extraordinary gift. It's a jewel in the crown here on the shoreline.
So how are you feeling? Murder for Two opening July 8th. How excited are you?
Oh, I can't wait. I can't imagine somebody playing, I think it's 13 parts, and the two of them ultimately singing piano. I just think it's going to be fantastic.
Earlier, I was telling Jackie that she and her staff have put so much effort into thinking about how to make reopening safe for both the crew, the staff, for community members coming into the building. But she's also getting pushback from people who are still upset that they may have to wear a mask while watching a show. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would just encourage them to not be discouraged by a mask. I mean, a mask is no big deal, and I think it's even more important that Jackie and her team want to make sure that everybody's safe. So I would say wear the mask. You don't have to, but wear it and don't not come because that offering is not even a rule. And get vaccinated.
I like that, Anne. No big deal, right? To wear a mask and still be able to sit with people.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's such a wonderful experience and so needed always. I was lucky enough to work in the arts for a while, and its effect on your spirit and your mind and just the people sitting next door to you, no pun intended, next seat, not even next seat, excuse me, spaced seats, is a real joy. And I really encourage people to go.
Well, Anne, thank you for calling in from Centerbrook, a longtime patron of Ivoryton. Jackie, that must make you feel good that you have community members that have your back, that want to see the Ivoryton continue and will do anything possible to make that happen.
It really does. I mean, it honestly brings home just why we do this. You know, I mean, you can sit at home and read a book or watch Netflix, but there is nothing like all getting together to share a story. And, you know, it's almost like your hearts start to beat in rhythm together, you know, the breathing sort of settles in a rhythm together. And we're not meant to be isolated creatures. We're meant to be a community. We all share the same atoms, you know. So being in that room, it's a tiny little thing. I know it's not earth-shattering or world-changing, but it's that little moment of spirit lifting and connecting that makes it all worthwhile. And yeah, having the community back together. There won't be a dry eye in the house next Thursday. I'll tell you that. The stage manager has already said, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get out. Places, please. So it's going to be an emotional night.
And we know some of the bigger theater venues in our state aren't opening until later this fall, like the Bushnell and Hartford Stage and the Shubert. Tanisha, part of this pandemic for so many people, not only in theater but other work lines of work and passion, is that they've had to be furloughed, or they maybe have lost work. And I'm wondering how you and your staff have gotten through this time.
So I'm going to answer that quickly, but then I'm going to go back, because sometimes the things I learned from the two of you is really foundational for me, that I want to speak it out. But we were because of the way we pivoted, we brought back the majority of our team in the fall of 2020, and have been like that for some time. We're a company that we own our building. We definitely had to make some shrewd and specific choices to be able to do that. But we have had most of our team back since the fall. But I want to sort of go back to something that Jackie said, because I think, Jackie, you do earth-shattering work, right? And I think we do earth-shattering work. We do earth-changing work if we do it right. And I think, what you two have made me think, and it's been sort of buried in my brain, is this idea of connection and catharsis. That is what our job is. And if we do it right, we build empathetic, thoughtful, to use your word, Jackie, critically minded communities that actually will do the work of changing the world, right? And that breathing together that you speak of, and that heartbeat combining as one, and the tension that we build through laughter and joy, and also tragedy and pain, and really giving folks the opportunity to not only see the full expression of humanity, but also to experience it themselves with other humans. I mean, it is the key to folks eventually not coming to us and saying, I refuse to do this thing that is essentially important for the public good, right? Because I've sat in community with these people, and I recognize that I have a responsibility, not just to myself, but to the people with whom I shared a heartbeat, with people with whom I've shared a breath. And so I think we're coming to understanding the true gravity of theater making, storytelling, and gathering. And I think, the foreplay of not being able to do it will provide that cathartic release Jackie's talking about for her team on Thursday, and for that audience on Thursday. And now our job is to continue to replicate that in the performances, night after night, show after show, season after season, so we can do our part in creating a world that we want to live in, and not just talk about it and say we see it and we know what it looks like, but actively engage in the kind of community building that we do,
Yeah. Thank you, Tanisha. Yes.
We heard Tanisha talking about the importance of not leaving the new audiences behind as theater venues are able to open back up and have fuller seasons down the road. Jackie, what have you been doing in Iverington to get the new audiences engaged and to not leave them behind?
Well, we're just starting. So this past year, I've been meeting a lot of new people, because along the shoreline, I'm sure you've noticed with skyrocketing real estate, is that a lot of people from the cities have moved here, and we do have a changing demographic. We have a lot of young people who've moved here from the city. I met couples from Hoboken, from Philly, from New York, who have who work from home. They don't need to live in a city anymore. So I've been spending a lot of time speaking and finding out, what they like to do, where did they go, what shows did they see, and it is going to impact. I can only say that I have started to work on next season, but there's a a couple of shows I'd thought about, and I thought, well, maybe we'll give it a try. Maybe I can. Every year we've tried to do something to bring in a younger demographic. And sometimes it did alienate the older crowd. Rent specifically alienated a lot of people. But I think it's time to let that, I don't know. I feel like COVID affected a lot of us in this. It's just time to let some of those things go and move where you want to move, where you feel is the right direction for the theater to move in. It may not be radical change. It's probably a gradual change, but it definitely has taken away some of those restrictions on me that I thought, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. You know, that's gone now. Maybe it is time to start thinking about, more new works, more stuff that will appeal to a younger generation. And by younger, I mean under 50. So that's my demographic.
It's ours too. I mean, it's theater, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're hearing Jackie Hubbard, Executive Artistic Director at Ivoryton Playhouse, and Tanisha Dugan, Artistic Producer at Theater Works in Hartford, as we talk about how local theater has adapted and how they're approaching this summer season. Coming up, we're going to hear from a small but tenacious all-volunteer theater in Ridgefield about their season coming up. You can join us too. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. After more than a year of restrictions, beaches are filling up, restaurants are getting booked, students have signed off Zoom school. One group cannot easily return to life pre-pandemic. They're COVID long haulers. Coming up on Monday, we're going to hear from physicians about new therapies at COVID recovery clinics and the promise of repurposed drugs. We hope you can join us. Now, today we've been talking about theater and talking to the theater makers in our state about their summer seasons, how they're shaping up, lessons learned from a year and a half of the pandemic. Joining us now on Zoom is Pam Jones, Executive Director of the Ridgefield Theater Barn. Pam, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I described your theater as a small all-volunteer theater. I understand it's literally in a converted dairy barn in Ridgefield?
It is. The theater barn is in a converted dairy barn down here, but we do have, heat, electricity, bathrooms, air conditioning, all of those wonderful conveniences of life. And we are a community theater. We are a volunteer theater, but we do have a staff of 5 here. I do want to make sure you know that.
And so tell us what you were doing during the pandemic to stay engaged with your community.
Well, for us, we're a community theater, and we quickly realized that if the theater part of our identity was gone, then the community part needed to really become the shining star here. So I just said one day to my board of directors, I said, I think I'm going to go sit on the stage under the ghost light and just do a live show on Wednesday and Saturday night and talk to the community about what's going on. In the beginning, there was so much information to be disseminated as, where you could even get tested or what you should even do, in every town. It was no different here in Ridgefield. So I started sitting under the ghost light, which, most theater people know that the ghost light goes out when the stage goes dark at the end of a show. And the ghost light was on all around the world. And it quickly became a sort of organic groundswell for us to connect with the community. And we quickly turned it over to the community and invited them to steal the ghost light and submit to us different sort of creative things that they wanted to share with people. And it was really, really successful for us and charming and moving and funny and all of those great things.
And now the summer season's before you, and on your website, you're pretty clear that you've announced your summer schedule. What's it going to look like for you?
Well, we are in the middle of our first real run. We did do a one-man Christmas Carol, a wonderful adaptation by Patrick Spadaccino, where he played, 27 characters on stage. to very small audiences at the holidays. But this evening of one acts that we started on June 11th was the production that we literally shut down on March 13th, the dress rehearsal before it went on stage. So we reorganized it a little bit, shortened it. We're presenting it without an intermission to a 50% capacity house, and that runs through July 10th, and that run is sold out for us. We just released the last few tables yesterday, so I think there's 3 tables left for that run. Then we're doing another evening of one acts all by one playwright by the great Jack Neary, and that's going to run August 13th through 22nd. We're going to have our resident improv troupe back on the stage on August 7th, and then on August 28th, we will have our free concert for the community here in beautiful Ballard Park in Ridgefield, Connecticut, which is was a big pivot for us. We've never done outdoor musical concerts, but it was such a rousing success last year. We've actually added that to our annual offerings. And then our season starts in September, runs through July, and our first offering is going to be The Exonerated, the amazing Pulitzer Prize winning play, which was going to be our offering during this time slot, but obviously we had to change all of that, and we just can't believe that the fates. It's the perfect piece to open with. We know it's not lighthearted, but with all of the other movements and calls to social justice that happened during the pandemic, The Exonerated is just a wonderful, perfect offering for us to launch our official season opening in September.
Sounds like a great schedule before you at Ridgefield Theater Barn. You're hearing on Zoom Pam Jones, Executive Director of the Ridgefield Theater Barn. I want to take a quick call. Bettina's calling in from Madison. Hi, Bettina.
Hi, how are you, Lucy?
I'm doing well. What did you want to share?
Just thrilled that when I put on NPR this morning, which I do when I'm working, that Ivory Chin Theater was going to be reopening again, and I have their card sitting on the dining room table, and I'm going to call up and book for both of their shows. I'm thrilled. I'm just so excited going back. It's a wonderful theater to go to, and I have friends I think who will also be interested in coming.
Bettina, what did you miss the most?
I think it's the ambiance in that theater that is so fantastic, and just a little community theater and a place where you go and have a glass of wine before and just hop in there, and everybody in a great mood in a small town, and it's perfect. And I think people from New York City will, and the other places that are coming to live with us, will enjoy it as well. I think there'll be a good crowd this year.
Jackie, did you want to respond to Bettina?
Thank you, Bettina. I can't wait to see you there. Give me a shout out. Give me a wave. I'm going to try and be at every show because I'm just so desperately happy to be back too.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thanks for calling in, Bettina. I wanted to go back to Pam. When I was talking with Jackie and Tanisha earlier, Jackie especially mentioning the Actors Union and how it's been advocating for certain safety precautions. And I know, again, the Ridgefield Theater Barn, you have a lot of volunteers at your shop. And how do you talk about the conversations of keeping people safe as well as in the community?
Well, we've tried to be really transparent, throughout the whole process. We also had we don't own our building. We rent it from the town, but we do, all of our own everything within the walls. We had the HVAC system overhauled. We had the entire building cleaned from top to bottom, and including COVID, a couple of COVID mistings of the building where put an extra layer of protection. We purchased a cold ULV fogger, and we put everything on the website, everything that we're doing. When it got to be time to reopen, we did ask that anyone who wants to work with us, of course, we don't work exclusively with the unions. We have a lot of volunteers, as you said. We have asked that they all be vaccinated if they want to work with us in any capacity. And have just tried to be very, very open about it. Overwhelmingly, the response here has been positive. People are excited to get back here into the theater. But I have to say that one of the things I thought about, and we talked a lot at the board level, was, how are we going to equip our volunteers who are here to greet and be ushers and work with our patrons for those situations that might occur, like Jackie spoke of, where we might get some pushback. I'd love to believe that down here in Ridgefield and Fairfield County that everybody is going to be coming along with the mask mandates or whatever the rules are at the time when we're all reopening. But that was a concern, putting our people on the front line and having to perhaps deal with some pushback.
Yeah, definitely. Just hearing from community and seeing how they'll react. But at the same time, we've been doing this now for a year and a half. As our earlier caller said, masks, no big deal. I wanted to close with Tanisha Dugan. Again, there's so much energy and positivity from not only the callers, but from each of you about the future. Tanisha, what do you want to see? What does this mean for theater as we move forward, even past the fall, about the kind of art that we can experience together?
Well, I think Pam and her team are onto something, thinking about their work with their Ghostlight project in the earlier times and passing the Ghostlight to their community and really re-engaging with their community as they're telling these stories. I mean, I think I want to follow in her pathway, right? Because it all started with us telling stories around a fire. Because we all had to get together. We had to pass the mic, not just to the best singer in the community, but to the storyteller who had something important to share with us that may not have the voice, the big voice to share it, but that we just had to listen a little closer. So I think that to me feels like the takeaway, right, is that we were isolated for so long away from our community. Innovative things like what Pam and her team were doing, calling everybody on the phone like Jackie and her team were doing. Those are the pieces that I take away as I think about what the future means for not only me as a theater maker or the company that I work for, but for the industry at large. How do we center our community? How do we connect personally and individually? How do we model that connection and then share it out? How do we engage in the stories that matter through radical joy and radical transformation?
Well, I want to thank Tanisha Dugan again for joining us, artistic producer at TheaterWorks in Hartford. Walden sounds amazing. I got to get my tickets. Thank you, Tanisha, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with you again. Jackie, I adore you, and I can't wait to get down to Ivoryton. And I've got to get my little booty down to Ridgefield because you guys seem to be doing amazing things.
Thank you, Tanisha. Pam Jones was here from the Ridgefield Theater Barn. She's executive director there. Pam, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And right back at you too, ladies. I can't wait to get back and seeing all the great theater.
And Jackie Hubbard, Executive Artistic Director at Ivoryton Playhouse. A pleasure always, Jackie, to hear from you. Break a leg in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Lucy, and I hope you can make it down someday. I'd love to see you.
I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Today's show produced by Robin Doyen Aiken with help from Matt Dwyer on the phones. Gene Almatruda was our technical producer today. We hope you have a great weekend.